Welcome to episode 34 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a molecular science graduate student and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Morgan Genge, Innovation Project Manager at Arterra Wines. Arterra Wines dates back to 1874 and since then has become Canada's leading producer and marketer of globally recognized Canadian and imported wines. They have grown and evolved to owning and distributing over 100 wine brands, which includes Jackson-Triggs, Ruffino, Crawford and Sawmill Creek. On this episode, Morgan talked to me about what exactly an innovation manager does and the path that she took to get there from her biology degree at Waterloo University. I dive deep into questions about her career and what exactly is project management and how exactly does it work? Not to mention, how does Morgan stay on top of it without getting overwhelmed with things and the tools that she uses? A lot of this episode was focused on talking about Morgan's co-op experiences and why she believes it is so important. It was fun to catch up with Morgan and talk about her personal beliefs on why co-op placements are so valuable. So, enough with that introduction, let's get on with the show. Thank you, Morgan, for coming on the show. I know we were just talking before we did our little record. We have a snowy morning, nice atmosphere to have a nice chat to get started. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Did we see each other at the last Restaurant Canada show that was in person, or was it the one before? I've lost track of time and I don't remember anymore.
I don't even remember when it was because the months and years are now all blending together, but there was a panel downtown Toronto, and I think that was the last time that I saw you in real life.
I think so. Well, I know through FoodGrads we've connected multiple occasions, but I haven't actually had the time to sit you down and just talk for an hour. So I'm really looking forward to that and sharing it with everyone.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And I mean, I've been connected to FoodGrads for quite some time. I think I have a blog post in the early archives.
You do. So make sure to share that.
Yeah, I know. I've, loved to talk to students and talk to new grads and talk about myself as well. So I think it's a perfect fit.
Okay, well, if we're going to get you talking, we better start asking some questions. So can you tell me more about where you are right now and what you do there?
So right now I'm an innovation project manager at Arterra Wines Canada. And so Arterra is Canada's leading producer of, globally recognized Canadian and imported wines. So I'm sure you have heard of at least one of our many, many brands. It would take a while to list them all, but the most popular ones are Jackson-Triggs. And I know you had someone on from Jackson-Triggs before. So anyone who's a, fan of the podcast, if you haven't listened to that one, I do recommend it. But also we have Inniskillin, Bodacious, Ruffino, Crawford that we import. So many amazing products. And then in Ontario, we also own and operate the Wine Rack store. So there's 164 Wine Rack stores where you can get all of our amazing products as well. So I've been with Arterra only for a few months. So pandemic job change has been, a wild ride. And we could talk a lot about that as well. But what I'm doing as an innovation project manager is I really oversee any new product launches from end to end. So from, we have this idea of a cool product that we want to launch, all the way to making it a reality. So looking at things from end to end, which is a very interesting role because most people, and probably anyone who's working in the industry, and even in my past, in my experience in product development, you're really focused on your area of expertise. So what I do as a project manager is kind of connect all the dots and put this mega puzzle together of all the different things that need to happen to get an idea into an actual product in market that people can buy. So in terms of the day-to-day, it's different all the time, which I really like. Bring something to life and then we can move on to the next thing. Speed to market is very important in a competitive food and beverage world. So getting into market with quality product is a top priority. but there are a lot of things that need to happen in a certain sequence. And so really managing that timeline and working with people, it's really kind of bringing people together, solving problems, talking about things. And as a project manager, overseeing kind of all the different areas, it's anticipating what is going to be the downstream impact if something happens in the R&D side and we might have a delay, and then how does that impact all the other functions that have their work happening at the same time or need to happen after. So it's like a big puzzle, and that's what I like. So it's pretty fun. It can be stressful at times, but overall it's fun.
Well, it's a good way to think about it in terms of a puzzle. I always think project management's one of those things that everyone, I think when they first get into it, they think because they've, in a way, project managed their way out of a university or college degree that they can manage projects and time all at once. But once you get thrown into actual workplaces, you start to really recognize the gaps. And it's just always amazing to me that anything even comes to the market, because when you're working with multiple disciplinary teams and people and ideas, it's just amazing how anything actually gets done.
Yeah. And there are so many people that have to come together to bring something to life. So it's quite amazing to see how many people touch it and how many different functions. And being a project manager, you're kind of in the center of it all. So I have a background, and we can get into that, in product development and R&D. So that's kind of where I had a lot of experience. But in transitioning into the project management side of things, got to learn so much about all of the different areas like sales and finance. It's been a really, really great ride over the past 3 or so years that I've been solely working in project management.
Well, let's get into what you were saying. I would love to know, because I know that you have a background degree in biology, and I think it would be very interesting, especially at University of Waterloo too, which I could be mistaken, doesn't really talk about the food sciences. So I'd love for you to walk us through how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. And this is something that I love talking about because it is so interesting. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from the University of Waterloo. When I went to Waterloo many years ago, I started in a science and business program. I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was kind of debating if I was going to go into engineering or what kind of science, but settled on the science and business because it kind of gave a bit of everything. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll go into like some sort of like biotech industry type thing as a, 20 whatever year old. You don't really even know what's out there. And really what attracted me to Waterloo was the co-op program. Once I got to Waterloo and I started to learn about different things that were there, and they have the optometry school, I was like, oh, I can be an optometrist. So I switched into straight biology as well, because the science and business program was pretty laid out, all the courses that you needed to take. You didn't get many electives, you didn't get much opportunity to take different things. So I decided to switch into just biology because it gave me a little bit more flexibility. And then at the time when I was like all hung up on the optometry thing, then it would have let me get all the prerequisites that I needed. I still stuck with the co-op program, and I, getting ready for my first co-op job in second year, don't have a very detailed resume, or I didn't anyway, having worked at the local hockey rink making French fries and stuff. So I guess my food industry career extends all the way back into high school. But when I got into applying for my co-op jobs, it was really tough to find a job. Tougher than I thought it was going to be, especially in the sciences. It's very competitive. There's more students than there are jobs, or at least back when I was there, which I would expect it's similar, if not worse, today. And so I was applying to everything and anything that was even remotely related to biology. And my first job was a quality and research technician at Conestoga Meat Packers. So there I saw a lot of pigs get slaughtered, a lot of meat getting processed. And it was such kind of a real eye opener into the food side of the food industry that even people who work in the industry probably never get to experience. And I have to say, I actually enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy getting blood on face every now and then, but it really opened my eyes to the industry and, again, how much work goes into bringing food into all of our lives. It's not just, oh, a pork chop just shows up on the shelf at Metro and you buy it and you cook it at home. It's like, no, there's a whole process and a lot of people inputting into that and the quality controls that are there. And then even going back to like, that was once an animal, and then there's the whole agriculture side of things. So it was pretty eye-opening, especially going to Waterloo, where there's a lot of engineers and math and computer science. And I knew people that went to California and worked at Apple. And I'm like, yeah, I work at a slaughterhouse. So it was probably a very different experience than most, but I didn't hate it. And then from there, it kind of opened up the opportunities to work at Maple Leaf Foods after that. So it was kind of the next step in the process where I got to take pork and then make hams or hot dogs or deli meats and stuff like that. So that was really interesting to learn about. And while I realized I really enjoyed working in the food industry, I wanted to take as much opportunity with the co-op program to try something new. So I did one co-op term at DuPont Pioneer in their canola biotech lab as a research assistant. And I realized that was not for me. It was really fancy. I wore a lab coat. I was working in a lab, but also as a student, you kind of get to do the less fun jobs. But I realized that I needed to interact with people and I needed to move around and walk around and do stuff, not sit in a lab all day. So then for my last co-op placement, which was an 8 months in a row, I worked at Canada Bread, which at the time was still owned by Maple Leaf. So that kind of helped me get in there. And I worked there for 8 months as a co-op. And then I went back to school. And when I graduated, then I went back full time at Canada Bread. You know, everything happens for a reason. And basically my co-op ended up being an extended interview so that when I was done school, there happened to be a job available and they already knew me. And so I was able to go back there and kind of jump in right away doing the product development work. And that was really great. I loved working there. And then I moved to London, Ontario, where I was in Mississauga before when I was at Canada Bread. And I worked at Dr. Utker, also in product development. It was a little bit different than when I was at Canada Bread because I was actually based at the plant. So my office was in the plant. So I got to see some different sides of things because you're a lot closer to operations and how the plant operates and learning that whole side of things. So it was really, really fun. And of course, eating pizza every day for a few years is not a bad thing either.
No, I love their products. One thing that I recognize is that their products have stayed so consistent since I remember eating their pizzas like as a kid, and I still love eating them, and they just kind of stay the same. One of the things that even stood out to me as well is that you actually switched to a more generalized program, that you switch back to that full biology, which a lot of people might think to do the opposite, try to specialize as much as they can in university, but you recognize that, hey, this isn't really the best option for me. And it seemed that more generalization helped you kind of reach out, and you were very open to different types of experiences. I think it just goes to show, if you weren't scared off by the first co-op that you had, that the food industry is very is meant to have something for you, because that is I can just remember as well, my first co-op, although it was at a dairy company, it really just changes the experience just changes you. It really does. And you just realize kind of how small you are too, because you go into these huge factories and it's just the number of people coming together and the amount of product that comes out. It's just mesmerizing.
Yeah, it's really eye-opening. And of course it was, especially that experience was, very, very eye-opening, but it really does give you the respect and appreciation for all of the hard work that goes into it. And I don't take for granted anything that I buy anymore because I know how much work goes into it. And now, especially seeing the whole end-to-end commercialization, it's just kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah. Did you find that there was any skills or just tidbits that you found that really stuck with you since your co-op to maybe even the job that you had now, or something that you took with you?
Yeah, I think it's really being open-minded, obviously, going from like walking into that co-op job. And I was like, obviously it wasn't my first choice, but at a certain point you kind of take what you can get. And I think really being open-minded and walking into a situation and looking at it from a positive perspective of what can I get out of this, right? And even back to your point about me switching to a more general degree, that really gave me the opportunity to try a lot of different things, especially going to the University of Waterloo. And once I realized that food kind of was where I wanted to be, they don't have a food science program or anything like that. Mostly what I would say is they have some food microbiology courses. So I took a fermentation course, I took a food safety course, but then I also took a food history course. I took some other interesting courses just to kind of broaden my knowledge. And that's the one thing that I talk to students. I say, you don't even know what's out there. So, try out different things, find out what you do like, what you don't like. And what I would say, especially at my experience, I had a really great term working in the canola lab, but I realized what was important to me and I realized what I didn't like. And honestly, I would say because there's so much out there, finding something that you realize, hey, that's not for me, is just as valuable or maybe even more valuable than finding something you do like, because then you don't have to wonder the what if anymore. You're like, okay, that's not for me. I'm going to move on and I'm going to try something else. And especially with co-op, it kind of gives you that opportunity to test things out in a low risk way. Like you're there for 4 months, you give it all you've got, and then you can make an assessment and then you can move on and try something else. So that's what I like to say, even though my co-ops were kind of all related and technically Canada Bread was still part of Maple Leaf at the time when I worked there. But take the opportunity. If you do co-op, I would highly recommend it, but also to try different things. It's easy to, especially because it's pretty competitive and a lot of work when you're a student and you're in school and then you're trying to apply to jobs and do interviews and study for exams. It's tough, but do different things. I would say just try it. You never know what you're going to like, or you never know what the connection that you make at some place will lead to. I am a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And there's so much out there that just go out and experience it. And really, even if you're not in the perfect situation, you're like, oh, how is this going to get me closer to my goals and my career? But it's to look for the opportunities. And especially when you're a co-op student, it's really easy to step up and take on more or ask questions. You really get out of it what you put into it. So if you go in with a positive attitude and try and really just learn as much as you can, then you'll be so much better off. Even if, hey, do I want to work in the meat industry for my whole life? No, but that experience did teach me I learned a lot about quality and respect for all the QA people out there. Like you guys are champs, because that's a tough job. And then having that understanding of what different jobs are, what different people do, and the respect for it, it helped me when I moved into working in product development, because you work closely with quality, or being in the manufacturing environment, understanding what's important to them and how you can be a better business partner. And then now on the project management side, like just taking a little bit from every different cross-functional partner that you work with to learn about something new. Even though, am I ever going to go into sales? Probably not. I probably wouldn't be very good at it, but just learning and understanding how they work and what's important to them so that we can work better together.
For sure. No, there's so many things that you touched upon, but I want to also more again come back to focusing on what you're currently doing, because I know that we touched earlier about how you work with so many different teams, but I'm curious about where your role still sits as this project management in terms of, I'm just thinking of the hierarchy. Like, so who comes to you if you want to make a product? Who kind of says the final say? Yes, this is where we want to go. How do we stay on track? I guess I'm trying to think of the logistics. Could you talk about that a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. And maybe kind of continue the conversation of how I got from being on the R&D and the product development side into project management. So when I was at Canada Bread and at Dr. Utker, we didn't have this role of project manager. It didn't exist in that organization. And a lot of small and medium companies, even some big companies, it doesn't really exist. So when I was working in R&D there, the people who were managing the projects were the marketers. So the brand managers, they have an idea, they might do some market research and say, here's an idea or a need from the consumer side of things that we want to launch. And so working with the marketers. On my side of things being in R&D, and it's really a function of everyone being an expert in their own area, I was still having to do a lot of project management on my own, especially when it came to, doing my samples, planning trials, and working with the plant. And so I was kind of doing it, and I realized I was pretty good at it. I liked it. And so when me and my fiance were looking to move back to the Toronto area, I was like, okay, I need to move, and I'm going to need to find a new job. So I could go specialize in R&D and the product development side of things, or I could give this project management thing a try. And that's how I ended up at Kraft Heinz, where I was a commercialization manager there for 3 years, and then just before joining Arterra. So typically, still the brand managers and the marketers are very involved in the projects, and often on the ideation side because they're really close to the consumer and usually closer to sales as well, and understanding there's something that our customers are asking for. So most of the projects are really marketing led. And then in terms of the structure of where I fit or where the project management function sits, it really depends on the organization. Because I work with so many different functions, I really work with everybody. I fit in everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Okay.
So I have, in my 3+ years working as a project manager, I've been a part of the marketing team, which I am today. I've been a part of the R&D team. I've been part of the strategy team. So it really, I know some organizations, the project managers sit within the supply chain organization. So it really depends on the company, but you end up working with everybody anyway. So I think that's for anyone out there who's listening, like, I'm kind of interested in project management. What is the path to get into it? There's really so many paths because you work with so many different functions and different skill sets are necessary. So my background in R&D is helpful because I work closely with the R&D team, but some of my colleagues now and in the past, they come from a supply chain background. So they understand more of the operations, logistics, supply chain side of things. But I've also seen people come from marketing and they have more of that background. And it really, especially when you come together as a team of project managers with different backgrounds in their careers, then it helps us all work together and learn from each other. So it's a really good role to learn about different areas, either to, you've worked somewhere and you can bring that expertise to the project management, or even early on in a career. I've seen more jobs being posted for like associate commercialization managers or junior project managers. It would be a really good place to start and kind of, if you're not sure where you want to go, to learn a little bit about everything and say, hey, that's really cool. I didn't know about that. Let me learn more about that. And then maybe kind of, start general and specialize, or go from a specialized role like I did and then kind of go back general and be a bit of a jack of all trades.
Okay. So that gets me thinking. Let's say you're hitting a wine to go out to market. It's a brand new wine. What tools do you use, or like how are you actually getting things done?
At the end of the day, it's really about having good relationships with people and talking to people. There are obviously tools that can help you, and it depends on your organization as well. So at the very basic end of things, when I was in R&D, but kind of being my own project manager, I'm sure Excel and OneNote, tools to keep yourself organized with all your information. I'm a very organized person, so I kind of came into this quite naturally. But it's really just keeping everything together and kind of where like all your information in one place so that you can easily reference it, because there's usually a lot on the go.
Right.
Focusing on the project management side of things, there are a lot of different softwares and tools that you can use. So Excel is one that is probably the most common, especially in less advanced areas. And there's a whole world of IT project management, which I've had some exposure to, but they're way more advanced in softwares and stuff like that. But anyone who's ever tried to manage a timeline in Excel and build formulas of the dependent tasks and, hey, this needs to happen before this, but if that first thing gets delayed, then what does that mean for the next task? It's a lot of manual work. So Microsoft Project is a program that I've used a lot, and I really like it for managing a project timeline, because what you can do is you can put in all of the things that need to happen and how they're interrelated, like what has to wait for something else before it can start. And then as you go through the project and things inevitably change, I don't think I've ever had a project or ever even heard of a project that went exactly according to plan. And as things change, then you can see what impact does that have, or what impact is that going to have in 2 months from now, and how can we kind of get ahead of it versus showing up in 2 months and then being like, oh, we're behind or something got missed. So it's really about being proactive, depending on the organization size and how advanced the project management function is. And usually it's tied to the stage gate process, which is really kind of gating projects and only going so far before you have a checkpoint with whoever leaders in your organization that are decision makers to say, hey, does this project still make sense to start investing more manpower, investing in trials, investing in actually producing something before you make sure, oh, can we make money at this? Because at the end of the day, it's still a business too.
That's true, yes. Which it kind of, there's so many times when you'd be like, oh, this is such a good product. It just tastes so good and everything, but it just doesn't, it can't work out. And you're just so, it's sad.
Yeah, it's too expensive, or we can't get the right packaging, or there's just so many things that go into it, and things are changing so quickly as well. Especially, you would know as a consumer as well how you react to different trends, or new things come out, or even the way society impacts the way people shop and think.
I just want pumpkin spice to be all year round, please. I don't want it to be a trend. I just like the flavor. But you're right. No, it's amazing how, as a consumer, you can even observe these types of things and then imagine like what you have to do behind the scenes to actually get the consumers what they want. It's a fast moving pace.
Yeah, and when you think about all those regulations, and especially lately, you want to be fast to market, but you have to order materials or packaging, and that's taking a lot longer. So then that's impacting timelines. There's just so many things to think about and a lot of stuff going on at the same time. So I would say I've seen a lot of crazy stuff happen, things that you wouldn't even think about, like the truck breaks down and then your product is delayed getting to the warehouse to then ship out. So it's, there's never a dull moment in my line of work, but that's what makes it fun and exciting.
Well, in those cases, when things do go wrong, or maybe a project's feeling like overwhelmed, or maybe you're feeling unfocused because there's so many moving parts, like what do you do?
Yeah, it's really, it can be, especially new into the role, or new, I'm pretty new in an organization as well, where I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do things work here? And it's even harder because I'm still working from home. I haven't met really any of my coworkers in person, so it's a lot of video calls and emails and stuff like that. But it's, like I had mentioned before, it really comes down to relationships and knowing who knows what, who does what, so that you can save time and get the information from the right people. And of course, over time, you learn, or you go through oh no, when this happens, this is how we fixed it last time. So either you try to prevent it from happening, or if it does happen, you know how to solve it quickly. But that takes some time to build up, both on the relationship side of things and on just experiencing different scenarios. I think that's, again, kind of what makes it fun. Every project is different, but every project has its own challenges and its own complexities. And yeah, so if you don't like uncertainty, then project management might not be the role for you. Some people don't like that, and it's stressful, and I can admit it can be stressful as well, but I think it's that reward at the end when you see, not even just seeing product on the shelf in the store. And it was the same when I was in product development as well. Like, you see people buying it and you see something, being a part of people's lives. It's, kind of corny, but it is quite rewarding.
For sure. And it's so funny that you say the uncertainty, because I think a lot of people feel like they should, or it's okay, like they strive for these types of jobs, but sometimes it's better. Some people are just more suited for more jobs that are very well defined in terms of, like, I'm thinking food safety. It's very, like, much more like by the books, follow this, make sure everything's right. And that's something that works better for some people, know exactly what you got to uphold. Well, project management and R&D and all these types of things are more about exploring the unknown. So, and there's nothing wrong with taking either path. It's just what works better for you.
No, exactly. And you need those people you need the marketers that are creative and kind of really thinking outside the box. And then you need the people in operations that are really living the day to day and managing costs and managing people. And then you need the food safety and quality, making sure that products are safe. So there is a role for everyone. And I would guess that anyone who's listening to this podcast is starting to realize if you're interested in food and you have basically any degree, any background, there is something for you, because it is such a cross-functional world that there is a place for everyone. Even you don't even think about on the food regulation side of things. Like, there are lawyers that are working on food law and that kind of stuff. So you think, oh, going into the food industry, you have to have a science background. No, you don't. You can have a business background. You can have a legal background. You can have an engineering background. There's just so much opportunity. And I think I for sure didn't know that when I was going to school. I never considered food science. I didn't even really think of it as a program or really even knew about it. I was like, oh yeah, engineering or business or something like that.
Yeah,
But
especially with the school you went to.
yeah, exactly. And especially at Waterloo, because it is a lot of math, computer science,
I know.
business.
Yeah, I know a few people from there. Well, with that, like, do you think that there was anything that maybe that was the answer to the question, but do you think that there was anything that you wish you knew now, that in school, that could have better helped you for your career today?
I think something that might have alleviated some stress
Okay.
back then would be to know that if you have a goal, first of all, it's okay not to know what you want to do, because there is so much out there. So just go out and experience things and take everything for a learning opportunity. And even if you hate it, that is a valuable lesson. And then the second thing, if you find something that you want to do, for example, you want to get into R&D, and I had a bit of a third year, oh my God, I should have done engineering instead. Maybe I should switch programs. But really, you can get there from wherever you are. If you're motivated and you work for it, you can get there from wherever you are today. Your path might not look just like somebody else's, but every experience along the way is super valuable. And I spent a lot of time stressing about, oh, did I pick the right program? Even when I did switch programs, should I switch? Should I not switch? And I think looking back now, all of those experiences kind of led me to where I am today. And if I had, oh, should I have gone to Guelph and done food science? Well, if I did that, I probably wouldn't be where I am today, because every experience has an important role to play in your life. So if I was talking to younger Morgan, don't worry so much and just live the experience. But I think one thing that I did do that I really do believe helped me get where I am today and really kickstarted this whole career journey that was, I think, has been successful, was co-op. So anyone who's in co-op, I know it's tough. It was tough for me, and I'm sure it's even tougher now, but really stick with it and be open-minded to try something new, because it's really one of the few times in your life where you have the opportunity to do something crazy that you haven't thought of, like, yeah, go work in a slaughterhouse for 4 months and see what it's like. If you hate it, then but you'll come out with some great experience and great stories. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you'll be a vegetarian, maybe you won't. I did not turn vegetarian after I was there.
That's well, with that as well, now I'm thinking like with the student cap mindset, we're saying about how these new experiences and we know it's not working for us. But when we're applying for jobs out of school, how do you actually demonstrate project management on your resume, like an experience that you're trying to translate to it, but it's not necessarily like you're applying for an R&D job, but you didn't have an R&D co-op, let's say. Do you have any advice about how someone could market themselves in that way?
Yeah, I think it's really about believing that the experiences that you do have are valuable. And I think it's easy to write off, oh, well, I've never worked as a project manager, so I can't apply for that job or I'm not qualified. But when I applied for my first project manager role, I had never been a project manager before. You have to start somewhere, but really taking that time to think about the things that you've done and what you learned from it and how you can apply it. Because at the end of the day, most real technical skills that you need to know on the job, they're going to teach you when you're there. The things that are harder to teach or that are more valuable to come in with already having those experiences are communication skills, relationship building skills, your people skills, being organized and having attention to detail, those soft skills that we don't really think about or focus on in university, really. I mean, in Waterloo, we did a little bit because it was part of our co-op program. We had to take some courses for that side of professional development. If you want to get into the food industry, if you want to work in quality or product development, even project management, hey, if you've worked at McDonald's, that is actually a super valuable experience because you learn things about food safety, you learn about working in a fast-paced environment, you have to work on a team. There's a lot going on and you have to manage. I mean, I never worked at anywhere as crazy as McDonald's. I worked at the hockey rink, but that kind of time management of, okay, well, all the pieces coming together to get your orders out, and you have the drive through, and you have, like, that's all really valuable experience, and don't kind of undersell that. And if you believe that experience is valuable, if you truly believe that and think about all the things that you've learned, then you will be a lot better at selling it. I think also doing interviews, you just have to, the more you do, the better you get. And that was another good thing about the co-op program is I did a ton of interviews. I bombed a lot of them. But all those ones that I bombed, I learned a lesson that helped me with the ones that really mattered. So even applying to a job that you don't really want just for the experience of doing an interview and kind of practicing that, super valuable, because it's hard to practice in a mock interview, or if you're practicing in front of the mirror, it is harder. It's better to do it in the real thing. If there's a bit of risk involved, then you learn more.
For sure. No, I've bombed some of my interviews. I can't believe I went into a QC interview and this was for a co-op position, and I told them that I didn't like confrontation, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the smart thing to say. Like, that's what QCs do. But no, you talk about the restaurant industry. Yes, those things do apply with food safety, and maybe things might have changed now, but I know that there's a lot of warehouse jobs, but working in a warehouse also kind of helps you in production. I know when I went into QA, I had to do some stuff at the receiving dock, and I was like, oh, this is like all this terminology is the same thing from when I worked at VWR, which is a chemistry distributor of like chemicals, glassware, like anything in labs. And we were talking about SKUs and trucks and all that. And I was like, I know this. Like, this is not new to me. I'm just, instead of receiving chemical products, it's food, raw materials. And so like, that's also a good transition into the food industry. If you want to just, work a summer at a shipping job, it is very useful.
And that can even help you in product development as well, because if you understand the challenges of, what that department might go through as a product developer, yeah, I'm going to bring in all these new ingredients for my new whatever I'm making. But if you know that your warehouse is full and they don't have enough storage for all of this stuff, then you have to get creative. Like, oh, I should try and use stuff that we already have if I can. Or can we swap something out for something we don't use very much of? And just to be, more efficient in the big picture, right? Because you're just one part of a big operation. And the more you know about a different area, it will help you in something else. And I think people don't always realize that, especially new in their career. It's like, oh, well, I want to be an R&D and that's the only thing that's going to help me get there. No, like go out there, experience, and you will find that it definitely will come back. And those learnings, like, oh, glad I had that experience because it's helping me now.
And it's good to have like if you can like get mentors or join like association groups where you can actually talk to people who have been a little bit in their career, because they might be able to identify things you've already done that you could think of in a way that you could apply to a job. Like what we're talking about, maybe that didn't occur to someone who's listening right now, but if you went out, reached out and talked to someone, they could help identify those opportunities for you.
Yeah, and believe in yourself. I would say don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, for sure.
You can do it. You can get there, and there is an opportunity for everyone. And it even if it seems like impossible, it's not.
Well, you know what? I think I'm going to leave it there because I really like the messaging that you're putting out there. And I think that we want to leave on a positive note for people to just believe in themselves because the food industry, like you've said, Morgan, so many times in this episode, it's really vast and you can have opportunities that like skill sets that you don't even realize that you have that you can apply.
Exactly. And there are so many opportunities and it's really the great people that work in this industry. So, just get out and meet some people or, send me a message on LinkedIn if you want to talk more, and I'm sure I might be back again on the podcast and we can, like I said, Veronica, we could talk for more and more hours, but I think you're right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you already stole my question where I was going to ask, where can people find you? But it sounds like we can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best and easiest place to find me, Morgan Genge. And yeah, shoot me a message, any listeners out there. I'd love to chat more.
Sounds good. And, I'm hoping the podcast is going to last a lot longer because I'm really enjoying this. So I'll get it when I'm like maybe in the hundreds of episodes. I'll bring you back on there and then we can see how you're even more into your career. So thanks for coming on the show, Morgan. This was fun.
Well, thanks again for having me. This was a great highlight for the snowy day that we're in today here in Toronto. So it was a great time and I hope everyone has a great day who's listening.
That was episode 34 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads website by clicking the podcast tab on the homepage. There you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Happy New Year, everyone! I'm so excited to be starting out this new year with you and already have a ton of new podcasts lined up, so I can't wait for that. This year, I am looking to branch out and cover even more jobs in the food, beverage, and let's start getting into those agricultural jobs as well. As of this podcast, we are also shifting to weekly. Yay! I was able to get more added support for the podcast, so that means even more great guests that are going to come on the show and more great content for you. As always, if you have any suggestions for people you want to hear on the show, or if you want a particular career covered, then please reach out to me at veronica@foodgrads.com or just any of the FoodGrads social media channels. It will eventually hit me. I would love to hear from you. I'm really looking forward to this year for the podcast. It's going to be great. Anyways, that's it for this week's podcast. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.